Yo, what's up? Welcome to Numbers with Jacari. I'm your host, Jacari, but you already know, call me Ace. And in this episode, we're breaking down the number 8 because it's more than abundance. We're going over its ruler, its meaning, its area of life, everything that comes with it when it's in your chart. Because like I said, it's more than abundance. Now, when we look at number 8's rulers, it's ruled by Saturn and Pluto. Saturn is ruled by, or rather rules over, structure, stability, discipline, work ethic, and just also work in general, boundaries and things of that sort. But also on the other side, abuse, doubts, restrictions, limitations, delays. And then you bring Pluto into the mix, ruling over transformation, amplification, evolvement and evolution, secrets, levels of growth, magnification's also in there. You also have possessiveness on the other side, as well as destruction, despair, forms of death, and also fears. And when we look at this embodied in 8, it very much is a very slow moving energy. It likes to take its time, which is highlighted by Saturn. And it's also the area of life that it rules over is time, money, career, generations, and things like that stuff. And that's very much consistent with Saturn and Pluto in their energy. Now, one of the things that I think is so interesting about 8 is its enigmatic nature, in the fact that with Saturn being more of this traditional energy that people frame it as, there's also this deep-seated rebellion in there as well. 8 is very much aware of the fact that though things may work for a period of time, it may not work the same forever. Things will have to change eventually because there's just a level of evolvement that is going to come with just existence in and of itself. And that comes very much from that Pluto rulership in that evolution, transformation energy, I personally believe. So when we're looking at this energy of 8, it can be a very aware energy, and I think that's highlighted in that rebellion and tradition balance. But there's also a depth, there's also a confidence, a determination, a focus, and there's also this introspectiveness of where the awareness is taking in everything externally, it's also taking in so much internally. And I think this is also highlighted in the reflection that 8 has between 2 and 8 sit in no reflection. The reflections are two numbers that sit on opposite sides of the same vibration. So for example, whereas 8 highlights boundaries, 2 might struggle with boundaries, and whereas 2 highlights emotions, 8 might, or emotional expression, 8 might struggle with emotional expression. And in this introspective nature that 8 embodies, yes, it's aware. And the thing about the awareness doesn't always include processing. It sort of kind of can just be a recognizing, oh, this is what's going on. It may not necessarily do anything with that information, but it's taking account of what's going on. There's also a connection to power. And I think that a lot of times when you hear about 8's power, it's in this authoritative, this dominance, this really strong and ambitious, I'm big and bad type energy. And it's not to say that 8 is not that. I will say it is that, as well as the power that is in everything, of the power in knowledge, the power in being authentic, the power in learning something new, or power in your skill set, power in your self-belief, your power in whatever you put power into, like all of those things, every sense and type of power that is beyond a authoritative, a dominant, a controlling aspect. I think that when you can reframe that power that 8 is connected to, you're able to really recognize how deep the power goes, because there is the depth that is connected to. And when we think about power in regards to the reflection between 2 and 8, you can also see the emotional power, the communal power, the power in connection and support systems and comfort and desires and needs and intimacy. Because of that reflection between 2 and 8, reflections are so cool. We'll talk about that another time though. But another big part of 8's energy is that control and is that stability, but also that structure, that consistency, and also an honesty. I think that's very interesting to look at when we look at it personified, and when it's sort of kind of embodied in a chart or in a person. You'll find 9 times out of 10, 8s are fairly blunt, very straightforward, cut to the chase, and also have a wisdom to it. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, because I'm really excited. But anyways, you also have themes around greed, destruction, abuse, trauma, humiliation, and forms of delay. So you have people who have 8s, or just when you're involved with 8 energy, the emphasis around time is very much there. And it doesn't always mean that things will take a long time. It's just a amount of time. That could be 2 seconds, and it can also be 20 years. It is really just up in the air like that. But it's really interesting to watch its energy play out. Because like I said, it is that soul removing energy, but also this ties into the patience that is embodied in 8. Patience doesn't always have to look like you're waiting years and years and years. Patience can really just be the acceptance, that awareness that 8 embodies, that acceptance of what you see, what you know, what you hear, what you feel, and sort of kind of just letting it be. Not everything always needs to change, and I think that also comes with the structure and the stability that 8 embodies, of just like, okay, sometimes the foundation is strong enough. Sometimes we don't need to tear it all down and start from ground zero, but other times we might need to. And 8 holds sides for both of those things. And I think that's very interesting. And as well as the similarities in energy that 8 has to 4 and 0 in regards to rulership. 4 is ruled by Uranus, the North Node, Rahu, Mercury, and Saturn. 4 and 8 share that Saturn rulership. And then 0 is ruled by Pluto. And that is where 8 and 0 share that Pluto rulership. And that's very interesting. Now, if you are liking what you're hearing, make sure you share it on your socials and tag me at Numbers with Jacari on Instagram or TikTok. And make sure you book your free consultation to begin understanding your personal numerology, because just because you might have an 8 or know somebody who has 8 dominantly placed in their chart, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's your entire chart. There's so much that goes into this, so I'd love to be able to guide you on that journey of understanding your personal numerology more in depth. All the direct links are in the description of this episode. So let's get back to the number 8. So I was talking about it a little bit earlier, of number 8 in regards to a chart, because it's so cool to look at personified, because as I mentioned, 8 has a very enigmatic nature to it. One of the things that people love to do with me personally, with my career, is be like, oh, well, guess my numbers. And 8 is one of the hardest to clock, because there's this reserved, mysterious nature that 8 has. It does rule over mystery, so it's sort of kind of like in the name type vibe, but it really is not always something that you will peep upon initial assessment. Now, when it shows up in the chart, or how it would show up in a chart, is in that psychic destiny or name number. That psychic number is based off of the day that you're born. So if you're born on the 8th, the 17th, or the 26th, you are a psychic 8. That destiny, also called your life path number or your Vedic number, is the number that everybody probably knows, which is calculated over adding the month, the day, the year that you're born all together to a single digit. But don't forget about the 2-digit number that you get prior to that single digit, but we'll talk about that later, or you can DM me about that. But this destiny number highlights the things that are going over a long term, the path that your life will take, the things that are fated or destined to happen, things you can't escape, both good and bad. All of that is highlighted in that destiny number. And then that name number is highlighting how others are interacting with you, how other people see you, how you're remembered and regarded once people learn your name. And the greatest thing about your name number is you can use it to amplify the things that are naturally in your chart, which is something I do in my services. But actually, back to the number 8, like I was saying, of this enigmatic, mysterious energy that is embodied when it does show up in the chart, is very complex. It's because there's a very complex energy that makes this happen. And not only is that mystery, and you can't really figure it out, but when you have that transformative energy of Pluto, as well as the rebellious side of Saturn, 8 is very much ever changing. And as much as it can stay the same, and it can be stubborn and very much stuck in its ways of, okay, yep, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, this is, no, I like my things very this way, you're not going to touch it, don't move it, whatever. It can also, in some areas, go through major shifts and alterations that make the person seem unrecognizable. And this also comes with the experiences of 8's childhood. Of 8, because it has this natural connection to maturity, it's very likely that they'll experience themes, or rather people with this number will experience themes that will make them grow up fast in some extent. And this doesn't mean that, and this can happen to you if you're like born on the 28th or the 18th. Those are other places where you could have 8. It's not necessarily dominant in your psychic number, but it's a part of your psychic number. So if you have those 8s there, that's also key, or something you want to note. And also supplementary in that destiny or that name number, same thing, of that 8, that 20, that 8, but that 18 is what I wanted to say, that 28, a 38, and so on and so forth. Wherever you have that 8, you might resonate with that a little bit. So this maturity also connects to this trauma and a possible abuse of power or authority figures that might have happened to 8 in their childhood, of somebody who was above them. It doesn't necessarily mean that was a direct harm, but there was something there typically involves somebody who has more power. They weren't taken care of. There's themes around neglect. There's also themes around isolation. There's themes around direct abuse. Yes, there's like so many. There's abuse of power. Like there's a lot of abuse of control. There's a lot of different things that you can get to make you grow up fast. It can also be putting in a position where your family relies on you very heavily, of whatever you're good at, or whatever you need to do this for your siblings, or you got to do this for your mom, or whoever. It's like there's something that would push you as an 8 to having to take up more space in some way, shape, or form. Now, other traits that come with 8 dominantly placed in the chart are themes around confidence, insecurity, and people pleasing. And this is very much highlighted in the reflection that 8 has to 2, because 8 can think very highly of themselves because of this awareness of like, oh yes, I know I'm intelligent, or I know I am very talented, or I'm good at these things, and I can be very helpful here, or I recognize this is going on, and da 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 da. But that also can cause a struggle to prioritize themselves. Just again, like what I was talking about earlier, of there's a recognizing, there's an accepting, there's a seeing, there's an taking account for, but there's not always the processing. So, okay, yes, I'm thinking very highly of myself, but everybody needs help, so I'm good, I'm straight, it's whatever, whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and take care of these people, I don't really need anything from me. And it's like, babe, I'm gonna need you to also let people take care of you the way that you take care of them. But yes, I'm gonna need you to do that. And this very highly, and also thinking very highly of themselves and struggling to prioritize themselves, highlights the fact that 2 things can be true at the same time. So again, that enigmatic nature. So there's this confidence, yes, in embracing their natural power, or this confidence that can be there in regards to embracing their natural gifts, but there can also be that insecurity around embracing their natural gifts as well. But I will say that confidence in embracing that natural power that they have can alter a lot of things, because when you're able to step into your power as a number that rules over power, that's sort of kind of when the shifts start going on. And that power can be in setting boundaries. It can be in removing yourself from situations that you don't need to be in no more. Stop talking to people you don't need to talk to no more. Whatever it is, embracing that confidence and embracing that power, it does wonders. But other things that 8 rules over is where it's embodied in a chart is things around wisdom and knowledge and experience. And like I said earlier, of like 8 is usually exposed to things that will make them grow up fast in some way, shape, or form. And this can be in any age, like you just felt like you were like on a very quick path to having to be an adult at a young age to some extent. And this also puts them in a position where they're likely to end up in places where they have the opportunity to learn, or they get the experience to know before other people or before their peers per se. So you might be a 10-year-old learning about stuff that 20-year-olds are just learning type vibe. This is definitely an exaggeration, but things around that vibe that can add to their natural wisdom and knowledge and experience. There's also an extremism and also an abundance that can come in there too, of with Saturn and Pluto both highlighting power and Pluto's amplification. 8 is exposed to both sides of the same coin in a lot of wild experiences, mind you. I feel like the chaos of the rulers is very much embodied in 8 when it's personified, and also the psychological impacts of like some of the experiences you're just like, I can't really see that happening, but I mean, go off. But no, they tend to be true, and I think that's really interesting. There's a lot of complexity in that. There's also a possibility for a relationship with pessimism, depression, and humiliation. And I would say that this is very much seen in the depth that 8 it has access to. And it's not a situation of, oh, when they're alone, it's rather, and at least not all the time, when an 8 is alone, they're immediately thinking bad about themselves, and the intrusive thoughts are intrusiving. Sure, but that can happen to anybody as well, because also you have 8 in your chart. But if you want to know more about that, definitely hit me up and I can explain that to you. But anyways, it's more of the fact that because of the depth, at any point in time, they can sink. And sinking is not always a bad thing, but it can lead to those depression and pessimistic views. But it's, again, being aware. It's out of an awareness of this, that, and the third. Sometimes the intelligence is not always the funnest thing in the world. But that isolation that 8 can possibly experience is not always a bad thing. That depth isn't always a bad thing. The sinking isn't always a bad thing. It can allow them space to actually do that processing that I was talking about that doesn't always happen. And it also allows a deeper dive to search for or discover more to some extent. Whether that's getting answers or just getting more information, it depends. Now, I did say earlier that 8 is connected to time, and this highlights when it's personified, the patience, the slow movement, but also the impatience and rebelliousness of 8. And this is highlighted in Saturn's rulership, of its rulership over structure and stability, but it also, like I said earlier, recognizes when things need to change. So 8 can be like, okay, yeah, take your time, but at the same time, it's like, fuck time. I don't like this. Get it off of me. Can be what can happen. And I think that that's something that everybody can experience to some extent. And you also have the awareness and the honesty and the relationship with justice that 8 has, because 8 rules over law, legal battles, and also anything legal, rules, and the systems that are put in place to emphasize a level of control or order. And this allows the added or awareness or lack of awareness that 8 has around these themes. So it's like, okay, yes, I can be aware of law and legal things. I can be very honest in regards to what I do know, but there's also the potentiality for those things to also not happen because of duality. Now, when we're looking at public figures who have 8s in their numbers, we have, for psychic 8s, we have SZA, who's born on November 8th, Masego, who's born on June 8th, Michael Jordan, who's born February 17th, Kendrick Lamar, who's born June 17th, Erykah Badu, who's born February 26th, and Keke Palmer, who's born August 26th. Now, the years are relevant because they're psychic numbers, but when we look at destiny/life path numbers, we have Lauryn Hill, who is, by the way, also a psychic 8, who is a life path 8, simplified from a 35, Halle Berry, who's a 88, simplified for another 35. You also have RuPaul, who's also a psychic 8, who is an exalted 8, simplified from that 26, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who's an exalted 8, simplified from a 26. So these are also people who you might be able to look at and see some of these themes highlighted in their work, highlighted in their interviews, if you know them personally, highlighted in their personality and things of that sort. Now, when we're looking at the name number, I am using a Chaldean system for this. We have Michael Jackson, who has a name number 8, simplified from a 44. We have Ciara with a pure 8. Katy Perry with that exalted 8, simplified from a 26. Young Miami has that exalted name number 8, simplified from a 26. And then Billy Joel also has that exalted 8, simplified from that 26. So it's really also, if you were to do a deep dive into these people, you can see more of these 8 themes embodied. For example, with those name numbers, you might see some of the people who have those name numbers as people who are very lucky or very knowledgeable or very experienced or very confident or really insecure or very much ever changing in that enigmatic nature or very mature. And these are all 8 themes. And there might be also like a depth or a mystery to them. It's really cool to look at when you look into it. But if you have any 8s in your numbers, definitely let me know. And if this resonated with you, definitely let me know, or send this to somebody who has any dominant 8 placements. But thank you so much for listening. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Numbers with Jacari, and check out my services. And I'll catch you in the next one. I'll see you there. Peace.